Hello, and welcome everyone to Yukonversations podcast, where we talk to Yukoners doing interesting things. People who live here must endure the cold, the isolation, and the odd bear encounter or two at times. So pretty much everyone has an interesting story to tell. My name is Ian Ruitenberg, and I find the Yukon is a place you can invent yourself any way you like. There's ski clubs, there's choir, there's Canada Games Center, the college, which has turned into a university now, and this place that I'm sitting in called Yukonstruct, which has a room for conducting podcasts, amongst a plethora of other things. So today I'm lucky enough to have Mauretia Holloway with me, and she comes from Zambia, Africa, and is an amazing yoga instructor, a great storyteller, just for starters. So I'm going to let her kind of introduce herself and talk a little bit more about that.
Hi, Ian. Thank you for asking me to be here. Great. This is a really nice little spot, this kind of studio in Yukonstruct. And you're right, Yukonstruct is pretty awesome because I've just been exploring more of it. Yeah, me, born in Zambia. I often think, gosh, I was born in a town called Mufalera. That's 12 miles from the equator, which means where I was born, someone like it was a 12-hour day, 12-hour night, 12 months of a year.
Wow.
And here I am halfway, and it literally is halfway across the world, in a place where in winter we have 3 hours sun or daylight, and in summer we have a little short snap, so it's from the sublime to the ridiculous, so coming a long, long way. But I will say that coming to the Yukon, and I initially landed in Toronto, and then I moved to Gabriola Island, and then I moved to Vancouver, and then I ended up the Yukon. And I will insert that I'm proudly Canadian. I've been in Canada for 26 years, so yes, I might have been born in Zambia in Africa, but I grew up and schooled in South Africa. And coming to the Yukon in Canada was, for me, it reminded me a lot of Africa just because of the sky. This is big sky country. And when I came here, it just reminded me of Africa and, driving across those great flat plains, so those big, big skies. But I will say the skies in Yukon are just spectacular. They are the most beautiful skies ever. I've taken some extraordinary photographs, not necessarily going, gee, I'm a great photographer. You don't have to. You can be a terrible photographer, and it's impossible to take a bad photograph of the sky.
Yeah,
That is where I find a big, huge similarity. And I also really like being in Whitehorse because I find there's a lot of eccentric people and individual people and creative people. The Yukon's definitely unique for me in my limited experience of Canada, but having lived in Toronto, Vancouver, Gabriola Island, and I know there are a lot of Canadians who've lived in much more different places than I have, but I will say Whitehorse is kind of special. So you want to know more about me?
Yeah, that's great. I was thinking about you the other day because you talk about the desert sometimes.
Yeah.
And I was watching the snow blow over the drifts. When that happens for you, does that remind you of the desert?
Yes. It was quite extraordinary because the desert, or Namibia, where I visited when I was once in the film industry 100 years ago, but the desert for me feels like the home of my soul. It's that flat kind of plains. And I was sitting at Yukon University yesterday and looking outside the window, and the snow looked like waves of white. And it was it definitely has, the difference is there are trees, whereas the desert there's not, but it has that flat white kind of desert flavor. In Namibia it's red sand, in Whitehorse it's white snow, but it has that similar kind of feeling of undulation and just spreading out into the distance, which is quite extraordinary.
I wanted to talk too about hear more about your storytelling, which gets incorporated into your yoga class, which I I highly recommend Mauritia's yoga class. It's the only yoga class I've ever been to where time goes fairly quickly. Like usually I find them kind of torturous events, these yoga classes, but but Mauritius is a little different because you become, you could be a snowflake or you're stardust, and you're talking about moons and skies and animals, and there's some of your storytelling comes into your yoga class, and that makes it far more interesting. And then of course you are a storyteller as well, and I'd like you to just sort of, where do you think that came from, that storytelling?
Yeah, thank you for the yoga thing, because that teaching yoga, that's just the way I do it. I've never thought about it. Just that's how I roll.
No
in
planning.
the level. So I think some people like you really like it, and some people may not. It depends. But storytelling, I know that my mum says that when I was a baby, she read prolifically before I was born. She read when she was pregnant, like all the time. And I'm pretty sure that's why I'm such a prolific reader myself. Yeah. And I remember she said before I could walk, she would put me down on the floor with a pile of magazines, and she would do the ironing. And she would stick her head round the door to check on me. And she said I would like I'm a baby, but I would hold each page with two little fingers and turn the page and then look at the pictures on the next page. So it started young. My granny was a storyteller.
Oh, boy.
So, and my mum read to me. Because my mum read prolifically, I grew up on all the Grimm's tales, Sleeping Beauty, Cinderella. My granny told me stories about why the fox had a white tip at his tail. All those stories that, in a way, I regret that I didn't record or keep them more, that are from my granny's granny, our grandmother's grandmother's grandmother. And my heritage is Celtic, so I think that the Celts were, or the Irish, there's an Irish element, had definitely are storytellers.
Yeah.
So I read prolifically, but it was only, interestingly enough, when I came to Canada, because I always perceived myself as a visual artist, because I painted, I paint oil, so I've always perceived myself as that more than a writer. Although I wrote from the time I was little. I remember writing, I was 9, and I would go to my parents' bedroom, and I once wrote a ghost story and got into bed and scared myself so much I didn't want to go back to my room. From my own story.
Wow, your own story.
Because the story was about a hand that floated down the corridor.
Wow.
And I wrote it, but I terrified myself with my own story.
That's amazing.
Anyway, be that as it may, when I came to Canada, I was so fortunate to end up meeting a woman called Michelle Tosha in Toronto. And she does she explores fairy tale, the real Grimm's fairy tale, not the Walt Disney one, and mythology. And what I studied with her, and she's a master. She really is a master storyteller, and she does this particular technique of using a particular story, any story you can choose, but that's something that in training that she did with me, and that I'm going to be doing now in Whitehorse, where you take a story and you take a person through the story, and then you bring them back and you allow them to walk through the story as if they're just moving through the story and seeing what's going on around them, seeing the horse, seeing the king, seeing the castle, seeing the flag, whatever is in the story. And from that, you then find, where do I land in the story? And that means, what is it that pulls you the most? Like, what is the image in it that pulls you? And then from that, it can be an animal, a person, an object. You then tell the story from that particular point of view. So I know Michelle told the story of Sleeping Beauty, and I always tell people this. And then she tells the entire story of Sleeping Beauty from the point of view of the flag on top of the castle.
Oh, interesting.
And then goes, I am the flag on top of the castle of Sleeping Beauty. And I was there when the king and queen, were trying to have a child. And, and so she tells that whole story from that point of view. And it becomes uniquely yours. It's your story. So you do that process, people write it down, then come back. refine it, and then we'll share it with each other. And you know, a lot of people go, I don't write. It's not necessarily about, I know that I've been with people who've made points, and then in the groups, because I've done this several times myself, and a woman who was a singer actually sang. And that was quite extraordinary. And then a man actually acted it out and did an acting piece while he was talking about it. But, you know, you can use whatever kind of comes to you. A lot of people just write it and share it and tell it. But why I love it as a storytelling technique is because you're visualizing your way throughout the story and then recording it. You once said to me when I was telling a story, how do you remember that?
Yeah.
And I went, because when I did the technique, it's like a movie. I play it out, and so it's so uniquely my story, because it's not my personal story, so you are removed from it and you can tell it from that visual point of view, which is why I can talk for 20 minutes and tell a story.
Yeah.
And I'm not necessarily memorizing it. I'm not saying you were perfect by any means, but I think it's a great tool. And then besides that, because you're doing this and because you're landing within the story from a deeply subconscious point of view, you also tend to find your own mythology, because we have our own dynamic that plays out. So you find that there's sometimes often a deeply personal insight of, if you say, God, I landed as the flag, there's something about you that, like for Michelle, that has to have the big picture overview as a human being. It's very revealing about who you are as well. So some people may choose to tell it, some people might find it quite personal and choose not to, but either way there's a real gift in that particular storytelling. So I know I'm rambling on a little, but I just want to conclude and say, in storytelling, I know a lot of people write and stand up and read it. Storytelling is fundamentally different. You're not reading. You're standing up and you engage with the audience, because you need to pull them in on a level. You need to see how the audience responds to you. There's a kind of dialogue going on as well between you and your audience. And so storytelling is a different kind of methodology of sharing stories from reading. I'm not saying reading isn't great. It's just different.
It kind of reminds me, as you're talking, it reminds me of a Timothy Findley book, Not Wanted on the Voyage. And it's a book about Noah's Ark, all told through the perspective of the cat. And the cat doesn't like Noah very much. He's not a very nice guy. He's pretty mean to everybody, and it's so interesting. So if I'm reading you right, it's kind of that sort of thing that you're getting at. And I'm also thinking about, like, when we read a book, especially for myself, because I drift off as I read and stuff, and I find I have a very different take on a book than other people might have. I often go in a whole different direction. So it sounds a bit like that dynamic is a little bit in place when you're kind of like exploring that more. When people say, like, a book, I like the book better than the movie. So you're kind of exploring that more. Why do you like the book more than the movie? Is it because you made part of the story here? Is that why you like it? And you're disappointed because the movie didn't have your direction in it, or is that, am I reading this right? Yeah.
When you say that, I definitely find that really interesting. I think Noah's Ark cat is exactly that. The cat tells the story. And I think that, when we read, obviously, I mean, we are the complexity the awareness that we have of ourselves. I think often a lot is so hidden and unconscious. I always go, it's like you're like an iceberg. There's that little piece that sticks up, and that's what we know, and the rest is hidden. And then you stumble across it, or you spend your life exploring it, or trying to find those hidden pieces of, why do I react that way? This little kind of tool that I know psychologists or therapists say with you, when you see somebody and you go, that really irritates me. Invariably, it's something about you. You do that, but you don't want to own that
Yeah.
you do that thing. So whenever you see someone else do it, you're really irritated and you point it out, because unconsciously you're irritated with yourself because you really like that. And I think that in stories, when we read a book, very often we respond or warm to certain characters, and good authors can also, that's why complex characters are great, when someone's a real ass on one level.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the Brit stuff is like that, but they're heroes, but they adulterers and they drink too much, they've got all these foibles, but they're actually the hero of the story.
Yeah.
And we are like that as humans, and I think we respond to that in a book, and then a film might glorify that person and you feel vaguely dissatisfied because in the book the hero was a little bit more flawed, and then in the movie they look vaguely too glossy, or maybe they look vaguely not glossy enough, whatever the case may be.
Yeah,
but I think that's an interesting point, Ian, because I hadn't thought of that, and there might definitely be a element of that plays out. Yeah.
You just made me think too. I had a friend, well, sort of a friend, a guy I kind of knew, a working acquaintance who was from Iraq, and I've probably talked about this guy before, but he talked about his very wise grandfather who said, spend a little bit of your time, most of your time, with people you like, 80% of your time. But try to reserve a little bit of time for people you don't like. So that because those are the people that and as you're saying this, they're probably reflecting things back about yourself. So you have an opportunity to learn. So maybe that's what the old grandfather meant.
Oh my God, how wise.
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Exactly that. No, it's true.
Yeah.
I love that. You see, the old guys, guys and women.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot there. But I will say that I grew up with fairy tale, and I think, I read prolifically, and all those old Grimm stories, whatever they were,
wild.
Yeah. And I love mythology as well. They're all teaching stories. Essentially, they are there to teach us something, and myth in particular are teaching stories. And the one story I delved into was, as you know as well, was the story of Inanna.
Yeah.
That is the oldest story in the world.
That was awesome.
It's between 4,500 and 5,500 years old. And I often think, Inanna, Queen of Heaven, and I often think that story must live within it doesn't matter who you are on the planet, all of ourselves, because it's like from the birth of because didn't civilization came out of Sumeria? Humanity was born in Africa, that's where we're supposed to have crawled out of the slime. But civilization, we crawled out of in Sumeria, and I'm going, that old story is and that the story of Christ is the same thing. Those stories of descent into the underworld. She went down into the underworld, and she got hung on hooks by her sister, who was queen of the underworld, Ereshkigal, and Inanna was queen of heaven. And she goes down and she dies for 3 days, and then she comes back up. Jesus Christ, the same story, goes down into the underworld, comes back up. And that story of down 3 days and up is repeated in many creation myths and many creation stories. It's not a new story. It's an old story.
Oh yeah,
I love that.
Oh yeah, when I was in Oaxaca, there was went to see some ruins, and it's very typical to see all through the ruins were that staircase pattern. Yeah. And the whole idea was that you went down when you died, and then there was another staircase to bring you back up, I believe. I didn't really pay enough attention to the whole story, but it seemed like a down and up kind of thing, resurrection and all that sort of thing.
And that cycle happens in our lives,
You did that with Nicole, I hope I say her name right, Bauberger?
Bauberger, yes.
Bauberger.
Yeah.
You did that, and so she did a glass sculpture, and then you did your story.
Well, she was fantastic. So Nicole did a whole art exhibition, based on that, with beautiful glass.
Oh, it was really cool.
It was really great. And when she did her exhibition, she actually came and said to me, "Would I tell the story?" So, I mean, I was hugely flattered and honored, of course. And Kai played the cello. It was a really great event.
Yeah.
And it was really fabulous to see somebody like Nicole doing artwork honoring Inanna and those sort of old goddesses from thousands of years ago. We need to we mustn't lose those stories.
No.
But it's not just having it in a library in a book. People need to hear it. Our children need to hear it. And I remember telling that story, which is about a woman who gets put on meat hooks.
Yeah.
And I told it, and there were 2 kids there. And I know someone said, "Are you going to modify it because there are children here?" And I went, No. I mean, I could be shot down in flames for that right now.
Oh, yeah. Well,
but at the end of the day, even the fairy tales, the grim tales,
they were,
where the
yeah,
woman is
Little Red
cooking
Riding
up
Hood.
children
Yeah.
and eating them, in a pot, like Baba Yaga. I go, those were children's stories.
Yeah.
Like, what's happened to our kids? They've become snowflakes. Like, seriously, we need to tell, because they're teaching stories.
And there's bad people out there. And it's good to know there's some bad people out there.
Like the big bad wolf.
Yeah,
we need to know someone's going to go,
yeah.
Nice little, yes, my dear.
Yeah.
No,
I think, I didn't, if I was to say I have any regrets, I try not to have regrets too much, but like, I've just started to figure out that people aren't as nice as, as I thought they were. And that's even with those Grimm's fairy tales growing up on that. We had the same book, and all that stuff.
It's like you have to be hopeful, but you've also you can't be it's not. I like retaining naivete though.
A little is
but
good, yeah.
I
For sure,
I do think you need to be self-aware. You need to be cognizant. You need to be able to develop initial skills to look at someone and able to assess them and take a step back and take your time with people and see. And there's some really great people around,
Oh,
and
certainly.
sometimes they're
Certainly.
really great people who do bad things, and sometimes they're really bad people who do great things. It's interesting, this life.
I really dug into that with the whole Soapy Smith story, which they say there's as many different tales of Soapy Smith's demise as there are miles between here and Venezuela. I don't know why they chose Venezuela, but anyway. But he was full of myths, and that was a big part of what Soapy Smith was. He was like a Superman for the little kids in the day. They didn't have a Superman, so they didn't have a superhero with a cape and that could fly. So they had Soapy Smith because he would give a bit of money here and there, and there was some people that actually survived because of he gave money to some single mothers, whose husbands had gone off and they were starving. So he did some good, but you hear that about a lot of kind of gangsters too. So I don't know. It's kind of hard to determine. Good and bad's really tricky, and I think that really comes up in the myths.
Completely. When I did the Inanna story, I told it from the point of view of Ereshkigal. So let's just get clear. The story isn't written from Ereshkigal's point of view. It's written from, it's written about Inanna. But it's interesting to ponder the baddies even in fairy tales. Like, for example, Snow White's stepmother. I once wrote the story from her point of view.
Right.
Of who she was and how she became the person she was. You know what I mean? How did she end up being...
Do you have a shitty mother or something?
Well, no, this obsession with the way she looked.
Oh, okay.
And that, like, I've got to be the most beautiful in the land. And you just look at our society today where how many young girls, you've got to be a certain way. Not even young girls, all women. You've got to look at a certain way and behave a certain way and... be a certain size, and if you're not, then you're not I mean, hello, has that changed at all? Like,
I think it's worse.
It's like I go, and so I wrote the story that she ended up being this person because of the way her society molded her.
Yeah,
it gives a different slant. Instead of her just being the bad character, it's like why? Why did she end up like that?
Well, and you can go into that with Soapy Smith too. He's like, the Civil War ended. His father wasn't allowed to practice law anymore. Just drank. His father just drank himself silly. So the mother moved away somewhere, and it was like.
How old was he?
He would have been a kid. He would have been like, I don't know, probably 16 or so.
Wow.
You know. And so
Tough
then
age.
and then he's like, for a couple of bucks, he's doing the real cowboy thing, which paid almost nothing, just survival. And then somebody came along and showed him, hey, here's how you can make some money with just these three little shell gauge, three little shells, right? And here's how you, this is way better. He lost all his money to him, and then it's that's the story anyway, and that's the myth. And there's I love Soapy Smith. Don't get me started.
I
on
can
that.
see your hero.
I think I am one of those little kids, that kind of sees him as a little bit of a superhero, but at the same time, I understand he stole people's money, and at the same, I don't know.
But it's what we're talking about, the complexity.
It's a complexity. And you see that in the First Nations stories, too. You see a lot more complexity in their stories. Yeah. So.
And I think that's Walt Disney, for me, did a disservice to the Grimm stories. They need to have that edge to it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's like it can't all just be la 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 and sweeping gowns and glowing jewels and happily ever after on a level.
Oh yeah. My mother wouldn't let those fashion magazines in the house. My sister benefited from that, I believe. She because my mother said, we're not having that. I don't want. She read a little bit of it one day, and she said,
And that's where I will honor my dad now, is I was so blessed to have a father, I think, who was the first liberated man before women's lib. No, for sure. When I grew up, he always said before I was born, I was the second child, and my mum was pregnant, and back then they didn't know if it was going to be a boy or girl, but he said to her, jokingly, of course, if it's a boy, just leave him at the hospital.
Really?
Yeah, didn't want a boy. Wanted another girl. Oh, my
God.
Didn't want boys at all. And when I was born, he was like through the roof, jumped up and down. He wanted a girl. This is what it was. And from the time I was little, I was like, I remember small, and he would go, you clever girl. Like, it was all about it was my smarts. That was what it was about. And when I was about 9, he once said to me, now remember, I'm not a youngster, so this is quite a few years back. He said to me, if you ever get married, you'll do well. But if you don't, you'll do better. I was 9.
Wow.
Like, I never got pressure to have boyfriends. I never got pressure to be married. I never got pressure to have kids. Because it was like, and he said, Mauretia, you can do whatever you want. Don't let anything hold you back. And that was from my dad.
Wow.
So I really am, I'm not saying he was a perfect man by any means, but he was an unusual man, and wasn't into sport, did not, because back then in South Africa, the rugby or the cricket, we didn't watch it. We didn't. Olympics, yes, we liked watching the running and the high jump and all that kind of stuff. But
did you play any sports?
No, my mum ballet, Spanish, tap, dance.
Oh my God!
Like, I did no sport. And I still don't like team sports. This whole thing, I saw that our hockey team lost to the U.S. hockey team, and that they're all devastated. And I go, that's the problem. You're either a winner or you're not. And if you're not, then you're not. You have no worth. I don't think that's a good lesson to teach anyone.
No, I don't like that.
Like,
that
what's that
level of
about? You've got to win or bust. Like, I go, sports should be enjoyable, and everyone, and even if you lose, was it a good game? Did we have a great time? Everyone celebrates. Feel good about yourself that you did the best you could. I want to ask those hockey players: are you guys feeling good today? Just curious.
Oh yeah.
So I'm probably going to get shot out in Flanders for saying that as well.
I've
Canada.
seen fans. I know a lot of guys. They're Blue Jays fans and stuff. And the Blue Jays lose or whatever, and they're depressed for days.
It's just sad. I do. It's like I think about Africa and the young kids playing in the township soccer. I'm not saying that it doesn't, but it's such fun. Do you want to? Everyone's just playing because everyone's playing, and then the one guy shows off what he can do, and then the other guy shows off his smart move. And yes, they score goals, but it's not. It's fun. It's just, and they're good and talented, and they play all day into the night, and it's great. I mean, I feel there needs to be a lightness of heart and an enjoyment of what your body can do, and the gift of that. And some people are better, and it's fun to applaud them and watch, but it doesn't make them better people. It just makes them better able to kick a ball. What does that mean at the end of the day?
Yeah, I do like one-on-one sports. I find more interesting.
Yeah, me too.
If you watch Federer and Nadal, squaring off for these, huge tennis events, the Wimbledon or whatever, and it becomes more of a mind game. Like the one that can stay the coolest, they can be down 40-love, and they'll just keep cranking, and somehow it just becomes this mind. And that I find fascinating. But I definitely don't get. The only thing that really bothers me, and I don't watch it too much unless it's been already filmed and they say this was great, is the figure skating. I can't stand watching them wipe out. It bothers me so much. They work so hard, and then they fall, and then it drives me nuts, right? So, but there is that. It's such a mind thing. I particularly like the athletic Olympic,
hurdles and running and all that, because it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It really is beautiful. And I love gymnastics as well. I really like I do like the figure skating and all that. I do prefer one-on-one. And years ago, I was into horse riding. Not so much anymore, because those horses go through quite a hard time often. But my niece did horse riding, and it's very different because it's you on that horse, there's no
the connection.
The connection and what you do and how, and it's like it's you can't rely on a team member to scoop it up, or it's you're alone, you're at it alone. It's you and no one else. And that's and I think that's what those solo ones are. When you're running that 100 meters, there's no one doing it for you, helping you, or giving you a little extra oomph.
It is. I think his name's Chipogi, guy from I don't know where in Africa. I think that's it. I'm probably saying his name wrong, but he's doing a marathon now he's done it in under 2 hours, but I don't know if it was sanctioned. But he did it with a team that were actually pacing him. So that's 26 miles in less than 2 hours.
Good grief.
And he has done 2 hours and 1 minute. But
is it 20? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, 26 miles, 42 kilometers. And that averages out to 4.5 minute miles.
Good grief.
Each mile he's doing in 4.5 minutes. Like it's just I feel like it's as big a deal as anything they've done in outer space. To watch that man run is just incredible. It's beautiful. And But
that also for me is it's the body you're born with, and it's what it can and cannot do, and you have no. You can certainly train and do a whole bunch of things, but the limitation is. What it is. Well, now, we've got to stop talking sport, because I'm not a sport person.
No,
so I love the fact, but I did bring it up. I'm owning it. I did bring it up.
But you do like musculature, and you do like animals, and you do talk about
I like animals way more than I like people, as you know. I also don't think we're superior. So on this note, I don't think we're superior to animals. I think we're animals ourselves. From my spiritual path, I definitely feel that the plant world and the animal world, and then there's the human world, and then there's the it's the plant world, the earth, the world of stones and rocks and soils and crystals and gems and jewels, and then the animal world, which is the swimmers, the creepers, the crawlers, the four-leggeds, and the eagle and the winged ones, and then the human world. And I go, all of us, we all equal. We must all have an equal place at the table, to the point that I go, You know, if you're going to go and blow up a whole mountain, you need to actually have a conversation with that mountain of, okay, is it okay that we just blast you apart to put a road for our own convenience?
Yeah.
And humanity I find extraordinarily arrogant. Like if it's like, but it's going to create jobs and it's going to be easier for us and we're going to be marvelous. Doesn't matter if the species are dying and we're chopping down the trees. There's a carelessness in our environment, and it's, you know, I should not talk about it on your podcast, but I struggle with it.
No, you can talk about whatever you want.
But still, it's like it's more private. Let's put it that way.
Right.
And I brought it up again, so
that's okay. Yeah, no, I was just thinking about that. I know the First Nations people from up here and from down in South America. They get together occasionally to mourn the cut through Mother Earth, like of the Panama Canal, the wound. They consider it a wound.
Is. And they're correct. I mean, I happen to agree with that, because I think there is, you know, like the rocks and the stones and all that have been here infinitely longer than we have, and our assumption that it's just a dead thing. You don't know. It's like plants. We're only now beginning to really understand that trees talk to each other. There's a dialogue, and in fact it's so subtle we don't understand it. We're too clumsy to comprehend it. So talk about intelligence. Are we the dummies here or not? And it's the animal conversation and communication exactly the same. I mean, I found extraordinary. And a moth knows when a plant is struggling, and it will go to the plant. So there's a conversation between the moth and the plant. And I find that extraordinary. I mean, I don't know if I'm the only one that finds the concept of that a moth can actually communicate with the plant, knows when it needs it, and goes to help it.
Yeah.
And I want to go, how would it be if humanity had the sensitivity to actually go, gee, that thing needs help, I need to go and help it, and not see it as less than and how's it going to serve me.
That's a good word.
It's just
sensitivity.
It's a different.
Yeah.
It's a different culture to be living on our planet like that. Of instead of how can it serve me, how can I serve you?
Yeah. I just think about the I don't know what the Maori, the First Nations in
New Zealand.
New Zealand, and they when a tidal wave was coming, they had no electronics, they had no way of knowing except for they sensed it in the air, and we're losing some. Doctors used to be able to tell different pulses on the body, different areas of the body. They could feel all the different pulses, and they could. So palpation was a huge thing, and now palpation's out the window. So we are losing things as we're gaining things, and it'd be nice to
Well, it's that whole thing. I think the medical profession is kind of slowly. That's the whole thing about the gut-brain connection. Like suddenly going, no, our brain isn't just this thing in our skull up here.
Yeah,
it's actually in our belly as well. And you know for how long as a woman. You know, it was like my intuition or my gut feeling.
Yeah.
You know, and you go, and as women, we always blown off. Oh, that's not logical.
Yeah.
I'm going, well, who's the dummy now?
Yeah.
Excuse me. You know, like that whole thing of knowing, because there's so many chemicals and receptors in our gut that's actually doing tons of thinking and letting us know stuff. And we've ignored it or said, you know, are you imagining things or doesn't, you know, and the whole vagus nerve, how that's working in our brain and what that means. And then the study they did, so you were speaking about yoga, where they did a study with people doing yoga, I think 3 times a week, and antidepressants. And they found that yoga is more effective than antidepressants.
Oh, I have no doubt.
So how extraordinary, you know, I mean, I love that research, those results now coming up, that it's not just... So, you know, somebody said, probably a yoga teacher said that 200 years ago and was poo-pooed, and now science is going, actually.
And creativity, too.
You know, and yeah,
like you're a painter, and like when you paint, it actually, it is kind of like, when we write, it's a therapy of sorts. It's a whole bunch of things, but there's definitely a lot of that. I think that is making a comeback because of You know, because of the internet, they are talking more and more. You can go deeper into that whole idea of doing things as a therapy, almost like yeah.
Which I'll segue back to storytelling, though, and that I think how important it is for us to gather in groups. You know, it's the whole thing about sitting around the fire and sharing stories. Now, it doesn't have to be a fire, but symbolically, it would be very nice if we could gather around fire and share our stories, tell our stories. And it doesn't, I particularly I want to hear more of the old creation mythologies. Like I know there's a Lakota creation myth, which is amazing, about this woman who falls out of a boat in the sky and ends up, it's just those stories that they don't get lost, fortunately they are recorded, but I think we should be telling them to each other more. We should be sharing those stories and honoring where they come from and what that means, and hearing people's voices. I think it's very different from texting and emailing and reading to the actual spoken word and hearing it.
I was thinking about the story Sedna. I love that one the most. I think it's my favorite of all those, and it's because it's not all nicey. It's got some harsh elements, but it's like the way of the world. It's teaching us that, so when Sedna's fingers get cut off and they all go to the bottom of the sea and become sea creatures, it's just like anyway, I don't like to go on too much about First Nation stories, because that's their stories to tell, of course, and we have our stories and our and whatnot to tell, and just sitting around a campfire. Just as you were saying, like, my favorite thing is sitting around a campfire and somebody pulls out a guitar and everybody starts singing along, and it's we need more of that. I think that's what a powwow is, actually. Is like everybody's the entertainment. The powwow I was at, anyways, the kids were part of the entertainment. They were performing as playing, and it was we definitely want to try to get back to more of that sort of thing. And I think we are. I think that's maybe that's what'll happen with all this Chat GPT thing and everything. Maybe that we'll just we all still want to drink out of a pottery mug. It was made with somebody's hands, and they dug up the dirt and they dried it out, and then they wetted it again and made a pot, or maybe, and just I think that's gonna make it's gonna be another revolution of us wanting to have that hand. And
I know there's it's either Norwegian or Swedish, but it's one of those Nordic countries who said, because consumerism, it's that whole thing of I can't have 2 mugs that I have for my lifetime. I've got to get new mugs every year, and I've got to redecorate my home, and get, it's always, and I've got to buy all these clothes, and then I have to donate it and buy new clothes, or instead of I remember my mum, you would buy 1 coat, and you always bought an expensive, good quality tweed coat, because it was meant to last your lifetime. You didn't have 100 coats, you had 1 forever. And then you would then end up putting leather patches on the elbow, and leather patches on and the leather thing around your collar, because your coat lasted. And now it is, we get a new coat every year, and we then throw it away in some first African country with garbage and plastic, and we just get rid of it, and all the synthetic fabrics that never break down, and consumerism.
I think there is some good things going on there, starting to see the start of that right to repair thing. It's actually been in the House of Commons. I think it's been a bill that's been proposed. If you're going to build something, it has to be repairable, like a washing machine or
because I know even cars, I know someone said a car, and I'm saying someone said this, I don't know.
That's okay.
But it feels the old cars, you could really repair it. Now it's like you have a car and it lasts for about 4 or 5 years, and then everything goes wrong. And it's almost like, I can't stand it. I'm spending a fortune on this. I might as well get a new car. Whereas before, that wasn't the pattern. So I'm hesitating as I'm saying that, because that could not be true. But there's been discussion around it.
There's problems there for sure.
But I will say, I know that, so I was saying there was this Nordic saying, it's like when we stopped when we stopped donning our socks. You know, like you get a hole in your sock and you would darn it and fix it. It was like when we stopped doing that it all went wrong. Because it's about, you need to fix things. So if you've got a thing in your pants, you darn it and you fix it. And it's like, you also have to sew really beautifully, because if you do it really well, it's almost invisible. You won't see it. And we've lost the skill of that and just the concept of, I mean, I'm guilty. I put up my hand right now. When I get a hole in my sock, what do? Do I darn it? No, but I know this. So I'm going, this is no reflection on anyone. I'm not even doing it.
Oh, no. But there are people out there that are, like, I was listening to the guy that owns Edison Motors. His company's in BC. And he was talking in a video yesterday. He was talking about needing a blinker arm for one of his trucks. And he's got all kinds of different ages of trucks, and he's trying to build electric trucks. And electric trucks is a really good idea, because as the trucks are going downhill, they're charging their batteries so they can make it back up the hill. Like and BC is very hilly, as you know, so it actually makes a lot of sense there. But he was saying his blinker arm went on one of his trucks, and he said normally he used to be able to just go get a blinker arm probably just about anywhere, UAP or all these different places that any auto parts store. But he said it took him, they had to order a special one, because this truck had to have a special one. Took him 2 days to get the part in, and then whatever time to put the part on. And you have to have a blinker arm on a truck. You have to have it. So he said that blinker arm in downtime and everything considered, and it cost $500, where the old one used to be like a couple of bucks. And he said that ended up costing him over $6,000.
Good
for a blinker arm.
Yeah, that's insane.
So he wants to build a truck that you can fix. And he says, I know I'm not going to make as much money as putting the planned obsolescence in there, but he said, I want to build something you can fix, and I don't want you to have to have a subscription to the computer in your truck. It's insane, some of this stuff. So there is a lot going on around right to repair. So I think we can feel good about there are forces at work trying to make this a better.
It is. It is encouraging and gives you hope. Because I mean, I put myself. It's like you default to convenience. We do.
We certainly do.
Because we get busy,
Guilty
we work,
too,
we do all that kind of stuff, and it's all very well. It's all very well talking about it, Mauretia. You got to walk the talk.
Yeah.
Or shut up. One or the other. Like you got to do it yourself. And, don't look towards others of what they're doing to a large degree. Like, what are you doing? And that's the way to approach your life, in a way. Like, what am I doing? And then do it.
I got to get darning stuff.
I have darning stuff. I can help you.
Oh yeah,
I can tell you.
Okay, I wouldn't mind learning how. I've got some long underwear I'd like to get darned too, because they're really nice.
Well,
but they're.
My gran could
I bet you.
I mean, gosh, they were so skilled, and with her old arthritic fingers, man, she'd done it her whole life. She would it was like fast. I mean, and knitting, my clothes, if I think about it, like my favorite things were, and I will say this because it's a South African word, my jerseys. Like, that's a sweater, like my jersey.
Yeah.
Or English word. Yeah, I had great jerseys growing up, hand knitted, gorgeous jerseys. I wish I'd kept them. But no.
Yeah, I've got a sweater home that my mother darned, I guess you'd call it. She fixed it before she died, and I really treasure it because it's like her. But I should mention too, since we're on the topic, I think it's the last Thursday of every month, but don't quote me for sure. They have a repair clinic here, so you can bring anything you want in here to Yukonstruct, and they will help you fix it. And they're very good. I've brought a couple things in here, and there's always somebody that seems to know how to fix stuff.
That's really good to know.
And it's fun.
Because I will say this, I'm useless at like home repairs. Like, I'm not a handyman. and I don't want to be a handyman. I'm just like, I know I have a friend who goes, as a feminist, you should be a handyman. I fundamentally
you can darn
disagree.
a sock
I'm a
by the sounds
feminist
of it.
and I'm not a handyman. I don't care. I really want someone to help me, and I don't care if it's a man or a woman.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's like, I don't know how to do that stuff. Like, it's not my skill set, and I'm okay with it. I have other skills. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I
of course.
I don't have to have every skill. So having a repair, like, I mean, what I do like is knitting and sewing. I want to, because my mum did it and she taught me that, and I think it's great. But the other stuff I'm bad at. So if there are people who are good at it, and I admire it and respect it, of people who are really good at that repair stuff, because, man, I'm not.
And while we're on the subject, they have a couple, like some really sophisticated sewing machines upstairs here. You can actually sew leather.
Well, I'm a qualified dress designer.
Oh, really?
Yes,
I didn't know that.
I know. Okay, so what have I done in my life?
You think you know someone.
So wait, I'm going to say, you think you know someone. So I'm going to say this. I've lived an interesting life.
I'll say.
Now, I want to tell you, I'm not going to say which culture or country or nation says this, but when they say to you, may you live an interesting life, it's actually a curse.
Of sorts, yeah.
Because living an interesting life ain't easy.
No.
I wouldn't wish an interesting life on anyone, myself personally. Man.
Oh, wow. Really, eh?
Yeah, I've reinvented myself several times. Like you were talking right at the beginning of this, coming to the Yukon and reinventing yourself.
Yeah.
And I mean, if I look back on my life and how being born in Zambia and then living in Zimbabwe and then ending up in South Africa and then being there and then the long immigration to Canada, which was brutal. Like I had a long, hard, brutal immigration.
Yeah, I remember you saying.
And I mean, I literally, the person I was when I immigrated, I lost completely. I lost my career, I lost my identity, I lost my self-esteem, I lost my self-respect, I lost my self-worth, and clawed my way back and did lots of things that I would never have dreamt in a million years that I would do. But to survive, I did it because, I was alone. I didn't have anyone who's going to pay the rent or feed the cat or, I remember in Vancouver I had I would live on the treat was a Starbucks coffee and those
biscottis?
Not a bit.
No.
God, that was way too expensive. No, it was that
bun?
bagely bun thing that they put cream in. When I got cream cheese for the extra 50p, it was like, oh my God, you're living large, girl.
Yeah.
And that going through that, and then slowly that clawing my way back up to where I am now. But I think that journey, and that if I talk about mythology, that's my personal mythology. I lose everything and come back up, and that's my cycle, that whole falling into the underworld.
Yeah.
But I didn't do it once. I've done it many, many, many times.
Yeah.
And you learn. Every time you do that, you learn something, and you come up, and sometimes you don't come up great. But it's like, as I've aged, it's like gratitude. This is my word for being grateful for what I do have. Letting go of, instead of going, that's who I was, and trying to hold on to that, letting go of it, even though it's painful to let go of it, because you liked that identity.
You've had some wild
stuff. But liked that identity. It was vaguely glamorous. And
I'm not sure you and I would have been friends if you hadn't gone through, if you had... I've always been good that way. Yeah.
I've always when I was probably 18, 19 and dropped out of university and was doing all the things I was doing, which was mainly lots of it illegal. Well, Africa, right?
Yeah.
Best dope in the world. And if I think about it, it's like, I would go and sit in a bar and hang out with hookers And most of my friends were gay, but at the same time, I had a friend who was so freaking wealthy, she would drive around with a limousine and a driver called Sabisi. And she would go, Sabisi, take us home.
Oh, man, I want a Sabisi, man.
Yeah, but, it was like, to me, it's never mattered who you are or what you've got.
Okay.
It's like, do you interest my mind?
Yeah.
And it's almost like it's been bad on a level. Because, when someone goes, but here's this person who's this person who we're all supposed to, like, be in awe of, I just go, well, he poos and peas just like me. I can't get all starry-eyed about you. You're just a person.
Right.
And a lot of the stars I met were asses. Like, I will tell you this. The people who were super famous and really good were always the humble ones. And the people who were on the way up and like trying to prove themselves and not quite there were the asses.
Right,
that I will say without a doubt. It's the people who are great. I've had fairly serious star people who would say to me, can I get you a coffee?
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? And I would go, sure. But still be a little kind of starstruck that they were asking me. But at the same time, I wasn't going to go, no, because I would go, you're a normal person, and I respect the fact that you're not trying to strut your stuff here. That you can't, because it also reflected for me a huge confidence. They were confident who they were. They didn't need people constantly to be, oh, you're so great.
But were they arseholes on the way up?
So that's a lot of arseholes on the way up.
So, but were these people that made it to the top?
I don't know.
See, that's my question.
It depends on when you meet them, and I don't think they all are. I don't think it's a given that on the way up
of course,
are.
no.
Not
There's no
not
rule.
at all. And there are people who then are at the top and still continue to be asses. But I was really fortunate in meeting quite a few who were just great. They were just great. And that really came home to me. I know one particular woman, I went on to a shoot with her, and we walked on, and there was the director and the exec producer and blah, blah, blah. And she walked onto set, and she walked straight to the runner, who's the lowest person on the set, and went, hi, Tom, how are you? How are the kids? And had this conversation. And like, and she took me under her wing and mentored me a bit. And I was grateful for that, because she just, it was like, Mauretia, you sit down, get up and get coffee for people, and like, you don't, it's not like, as a woman, I was always iffy about getting coffee, because that becomes men expect you to do it. So I made a rule I wouldn't do it for men, I'd do it for women. Really? But it was just,
that's a
thing.
cool rule.
And also in meetings, you'd walk in and people would say, will you play mom? And I'd say no.
What's that mean?
It means pour the tea and do all that.
Okay,
will you play mom? Because it'd be and I always said no.
Nice. Good for
you.
you.
Or if they insisted, I made it really shitty tea. Too much milk and spilling it into because it's like, I'm not your frickin' mom.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to be your mom.
Yeah.
Pour your own frickin' tea.
Yeah.
But remember, I'm a different generation, and I think it's changed a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And to that degree, I feel for men. But I also feel like, like as a woman, if a man comes and wants to open the door for me, I say yes. I know a lot of women go, I can do it myself. And I go, oh, just shut up. It's manners. Let him open. He's got a different body. He's stronger than you. Let him open the door for you and say thank you.
Oh, that's nice.
And be gracious about it. Like, I open door for women, you know what I mean, or men sometimes. It's immaterial. When someone does it, don't pull the thing about a man can't do that for you.
Yeah.
Pull out your chair. Get out the way, But that's me. Every woman's entitled to have.
Do you think that has
opinion.
to do with your wild swings, or is that your father sort of like?
I think,
like you've had this ups and downs, and you've really.
I think I was really fortunate in that I fell into a crowd with gay men who were like all my older brothers and spoilt me rotten and took me to gay clubs where I was always very safe. Remember? Because no one was going to pounce on me. And God forbid, because there would be some straight men there, God forbid any straight man was trying to hit on me that was inappropriate. Big brother Jono would be there like, Yes. So I always felt safe. And I think my dad played a part in it, and I think my mum did as well.
Nice.
My dad always said, women are superior to men. They just
Well,
they just are.
Yeah.
He earned his money, gave the entire salary to my mum, and she ran the house, and he respected women hugely, and he was into astral travel and all that weird woo-woo stuff. We would lie on the lawn when I was about 13, and then he would say, okay, close your eyes. Now, you must think of either a circle, a square, or a triangle. And then I would close my eyes, and then he would say, the first thing that popped. So we would travel, we would practice that kind of astral projection.
You're kidding.
And I would get it, I was literally 40% I would get.
Wow.
So it wasn't a bad average.
That's a good number.
But for a man, I always go, he was a man before his time. For a man to be practicing that kind of stuff.
What an interesting, and you said, did he fight in the war? Was he in
the
war?
He was. He ran away and fought in the war when he was 17. He marched into Italy when Mussolini had been hung, him and the mistress had been hung on those meat hooks, and he marched in, and he never spoke about the war. My mum said he saw a lot of really terrible things, and he was young. He was 17. Ran away.
Kept some softness to him somehow, did he? Or
yeah, he did.
It sounds like, because that's rare.
He did. He was the youngest of 9 children, and his mum didn't. He was raised by his sisters, and his older brother bullied him. And my paternal grandmother was horrible. She was awful. No, she was. She was just awful. My granny from my mum's side, the nice soup maker and crepe maker and the knitter and the darner and the storyteller. So I had a great granny, and then I had the other granny who never gave me a gift in my life. Not a Christmas present, not a birthday gift, ever.
Oh, wow.
So, and that was my mum's mother, and my father loved my mother's mother. Like she was his mum. Do you know what I mean? And I think he was young, ran away because he wanted to get away from his home, came back, saw my mum on a street, and said to the 2 guys he was hanging out with, "That's the woman I'm going to marry." Saw her walking down the street. And there's a photograph of her I have. And they did get married. And he never wanted a lot of kids. He wanted 2. He wanted 2 girls.
Nice.
And he just didn't like the concept of 5 children.
All that business.
Not that stuff. And I think he was a sensitive man in a fairly tough world.
Very tough.
And
World War II.
Yeah.
He fought in World War
II. In World War II, marched and fought in Africa against Rommel.
Good God.
African war was in Africa. That, if you read about it, that particular one was brutal. He was there in Africa during that time, so it was a tough war for him.
Yeah.
And I think that instead of hardening him, I think it's it depends on the person.
Yeah.
It didn't make him hard.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's
lucky.
Yeah. I just realized that about my mom too. She could have been harder. I think my father got hardened by the war.
Did he also fight in the war?
No, but he used to, his story was he had to bicycle to school while bombs were kind of going overhead.
Good.
And if they sounded like they were getting too close, he'd have to dive into a culvert. So he and the Nazis occupied his house. They took his house. They made it their headquarters. So he had to move into with his grandfather, and then, so he.
That's tough.
Yeah, he was only 14, 15 years old or something.
And that's a tough age.
It was a tough age.
Yeah.
But my mother is worse. She ended up in a prisoner of war camp in Indonesia, but I think it softened her because she was the most generous person I've ever met. Way too generous. Way too. She'd give you the shirt off her back, like literally. Like there was, if my friends got kicked out of the house, she would say, "Well, you can live here." And there was one guy. He was going to jail. I still remember this guy, and my mother went to the courthouse and said, "No, we'll take him in. We'll take him in, and don't send him to jail. We'll take him in." And so he was with us, I think, for a month or so, and then he stole our car. So I think he disappeared after. I think my dad, it might have something to do with him disappearing after that. I don't know. But anyway, while they were in church. So
God.
So that didn't go over too good. I always wondered how he did, but my mom was like this. She would just, if a worm crawled in the kitchen, she'd want to feed it. Like she just was, and couldn't stand to see anything.
I think that the war affected people differently.
Differently. I didn't really realize that.
Either just kind of shut you down, but my dad, I think, had always been an unusual child, being the youngest, and probably they grew up on a farm, and he tells stories of how his brother Edward, my dad's name was Charles Shepston Holloway.
What a neat name.
Yeah, it was quite a cool name.
And you called him Shep, right?
I called him Shep.
I love that.
And we never called him Dad or Daddy or Pop or whatever.
Yeah.
And he tells stories of being a little boy, and his older brother Edward, who, remember, 9 years older, so probably 17 when my dad was teeny, would ride a horse and chase him through the bush on a horse.
Wow.
And his mum did nothing because Edward was her favorite, the oldest. She was one of those women. She had her favorites, those old ladies. Yeah. And he married my mum, and she didn't like my mum. And because she didn't like my mum, she ignored the kids. So she punished them by ignoring us.
Good God.
And I remember when I met her, we went for Sunday lunch at her place. And we sat at this long table, and I hated meat, even from a young age, but all this like cooked vegetable. And I'm sitting in a chair between my parents, and then I slide off the chair like this, coming flat, all the way under the table. And my mom leans forward so no one can, because the grand's sitting right at the head of the table. And I slide right under the table, and I crawl out. Because they knew I wouldn't eat the food. They knew me well enough. Wow. And I crawled out and went and played outside. Nice. And they just let me go because I was like, no, this is not for Mauretia. Let her get out of here.
Yeah.
So So I think that the child, and my mum also never, my dad was, because he was a spiritual man, we became Catholic for a while, and I hated Catholicism, but he read the Bible 7 times. And then he ended up, he kind of pulled away from all churches, and I think that also informed me of my own spiritual journey, because I became a Baha'i for a while. I've always been a pagan at heart. I think when I was 16, I became complete atheist, and I went, there is no God. And my parents were okay with it. There is no God, this is just bullshit. And there was a long story around, I'll quickly tell you the story.
Sure.
So I'm in boarding school. And it was when there was the reborn movement, all the Jesus freaks. And these 2 young men came to the school, and they had long hair and bell bottoms. And I mean, there I am 16, going, oh my God, who these dishy boys? And of course, all the girls are going to become reborn. We go there, and we're sitting in, and you can ask them questions. And they're standing there, and I've never believed in marriage. Ever. From the time I was teeny tiny, my parents were married, which was fine, but I saw too many people in marriages that were dysfunctional, and I just thought, well, I don't understand why you're staying with each other. And then you would visit family or friends, and then people would be spiking at each other, and just horrid. Anyway, I was never interested in that, and so there was part where I was ready to commit and become reborn, and I put my hand up, and I said, I need to ask a question before I do this. And I said, so if I accept Jesus into my life, and I want to be a Christian, but I don't believe in marriage and don't want to get married, is that a no-no? And I'll never forget his words. The guy stood on a stage, and I'm in this hall with all these school kids, and I'm in a boarding school, and he says to me, if you don't believe in marriage, you don't believe in God.
Wow.
And I remember sitting down, and I felt devastated. I was really devastated because I was now, at that age,
Yeah.
And we walked out, and I was in boarding school, I went back to my room, and I wept. And I went, okay, then I won't. Then I don't believe in God.
Yeah.
And that was when I became an atheist. So I was that for quite a long time. And I read a lot about the Catholic Church, and then I read all about the witches being burnt, that whole the Spanish Inquisition and what the church did in the history. And I just thought this institution is really evil. For me, it became like the things they did, killing the Jews, even in the Second World War, not actually turning around to Hitler and saying no. Like all of that was just, if you talk about the Christian principle, it was just wrong for me. And then I got involved with spirituality, and I had a teacher. I started studying. That's when I started studying astrology. Not that astrology is a religion or anything, but really exploring stuff. And I went and I joined Ramtha's School of Enlightenment, and I flew out and did that for a few years, and I found my path is I find something that intrigues me. I get completely involved. I explore it, I read it, I find out.
Are they still in existence?
Yeah, it's still in existence, and then I get bored. Like once I don't like belonging to a formal thing. So it's even like when I studied shamanism with Harley Swiftier, from the Cherokees down in Arizona. I did that for 5 to 6 years, and I gained huge knowledge. And I'd studied Judaic Kabbalah with Janet, and she studied at the University of Jerusalem, so I'd studied that Kabbalah. So I've done, and I know my one friend said, you find these things and you get completely involved. So it's like, I love it, because I think what I do is I study it and I take what works for me. Like I look at Christianity now, and I think the message of love thy neighbor as thyself is the message. That is actually the message.
Yeah, so
you take what you can, and then, but I will say shamanism is still my path, is the one that resonates the most for me, because there's no leader, teacher, person who's in charge. You walk your own walk, your animals that come, you do ceremony.
So it's stories. Is shamanism kind of stories?
No, it's not. And the shamanism I studied is a 5,000-year-old tradition, Cherokee tradition. So it's got nothing to do with the First Nation here at all. And also I was taught by Harley Swiftier, and I have to say this, whose father was a full-blooded Cherokee, who told Harley, what the day will come when the white people's children will come to you and say, teach me. And you need to teach them. So as a white person and a Celt, I went under his umbrella with his blessing and his great-grandfather's blessing to get his teachings. And it's those teachings. I don't know any other teachings. And that's what I did training for in 5 years. And we did sweat lodges and it was very, very, very profound. The teachings are very, very dense, and I would say that because I've got they gave us notes, I've got all the notes, everything, and I will say that it's almost like one teaching is enough that you can study that one teaching for a lifetime. Do you know what I mean? It's just, they're all very deep. It's like Kabbalah.
Super sophisticated.
It's super sophisticated, very deep, and you go, oh my gosh, these people, and I think it's even like when you look at, it doesn't matter, Druids and all the old people, when I go, these people, it's the older people from, whether it's South America, whether it's Africa, whether it's Egypt, Australia, England, Germany, all those old traditions and old gods, Loki and the Norse things. I mean, there's such wisdom in all of it. So, but I really, all of it interests me, and but the shamanism is, I think that's always been my path at the end of the day. And I'm a solitary practitioner. I like that.
I love, I wrote a song about my little town, song poem, in New Brunswick, and it's St. Andrews, New Brunswick, and there's an island offshore, and it's called Champlain's Island, because he landed there in 1604. over half his men died of scurvy. The other half would have died too, except for the First Nations people went over and showed them how to use the trees and whatever to get through winter, to get enough vitamin C in you, I suppose. And so I couldn't really. I started deep diving into that First Nations culture, and I believe they were the Huron, but they were at war still with the what we call the Iroquois, which was 5 different nations.
Yes.
But they called themselves the Haudenosaunee.
Mm-hmm.
But they were getting pretty close to having a democracy. They were ahead of the Greeks as far as the democracy goes. Yeah. They and so I'm doing this deep dive thing into this, and I realize this isn't going to fit in my little song. So I leave that for somebody else. I do like to talk about it though, because I hope somebody else kind of embraces this, and they were their democracy was so sophisticated. They had something called the Great Law of Peace, which was passed down by word of mouth and wampum for thousands of years, and or who knows how long. And when they started, the Americans got together to create a constitution, which is largely our Constitution is based on the American Constitution. When they got together, Thomas Jefferson, all those really great minds got together. They called on the Haudenosaunee as consultants, and it wasn't just a little, oh, we're going to be nice to these people. It was they really, really needed them. They needed them to help create that Constitution, and that's why you have feathers in the coat of arms for America, and the eagle and the arrows.
Yes.
That's all tied in with the Haudenosaunee, and it's all kind of gotten forgotten. But I really hope somebody comes and brings that story back. And well, of course they are bringing the stories are coming back, but I think everybody needs to hear just how. And I don't know another word, but sophisticated that group of people was, the Haudenosaunee, what we call the Iroquois. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I just had to throw that in there because it's
I'm pleased you did.
Yeah.
Because I do think that a lot of the teaching and knowledge is very sophisticated and goes back many, many years. You know, so. And it needs to be remembered, and it needs to be honored.
Yeah.
I do think it's like we can't lose that. We don't want to lose that. People don't know. Oh my gosh! I mean, when you talk about the eagle and all, it's like, oh, so that's why that's there. And that, all of that is really important.
Oh yeah. If you put the thinking behind the arrows is if you put one arrow is quite easy to break. But if you put 5 arrows together, that's harder to break, right?
Yes.
It's the same thing with the nations. If we put 5 nations together, it's going to be hard to break us, right? Yeah. And it's just, And
that reminds me of, wasn't the same thing in like Marco Polo? Who was it? Or Genghis Khan? I think it was Genghis Khan, that they were all different separate nations, and he was the one who united them.
Okay.
And by that unification was then able to go and conquer and, build an empire, really.
Yeah.
And it's like that. I go, people go, we learn from history. I go, no, we don't, because we don't remember. Like, if I look at what's going on in the world right now, I'm going, hello, do we all remember? My dad fought in the Second World War, and I know what he fought for. And I'm going like, do we learn from history?
Well, that's it. I saw somebody said something really interesting the other day on YouTube. He said that it's the people that study most people's history will only go back a couple generations. So a lot of the history that people have now doesn't even make it back to the First World War or Second World War. So that's the average person. But there are people that study history. The people who you're right, a lot of history won't have any use. But the people who study history will be destined to watch it repeat itself. And it's hard because we're watching it happen in real time, the same things over again, and it's really hard to watch.
And I mean, I think I'm horrified because I'm going, but that's in one lifetime. Like, I mean, you know, when you go 3 generations, I'm going, but one lifetime, and it's like, it's here we go again, same kind of rodeo. It's like, kind of scary stuff on a level.
Yeah, it is. It's
because we don't learn, do we?
Some do, and they have to just watch it all unfold, and some don't. And I do think there's some good things going on. I really think some stuff is being uncovered now with all this whole Epstein thing, and I don't want to get too into it, but it's I think things are going to get better because of it. I think as that stuff starts to unfurl and becomes more and more exposed, then people who don't have to control themselves, we'll say, are going to have to start learning how to control themselves. These people that can have anything they want, they're going to have to start getting a little bit of a control on themselves, I think. And that's, for me, I'm looking at it as a positive thing in that way. People got to, because it's always been around. All this stuff's been around. So it's really important to fix it somehow.
I think that I sometimes wonder, because you go, how do you change the world? And I want to go, I don't know, I think that we can't, simply because culturally, like, our perception of good and evil, or right or wrong, or how we behave, is the rules that we live by, or perceived as good. I think that we have to fundamentally break it all down. You see, I'm an anarchist at heart.
Yeah.
And start again, because it's like, when I said I was talking about sport and, winners and losers, like, how do we culturally change that concept so that we don't have that? And it's also like, like, how do we go, the guy with the biggest house and the biggest car and all the money is respected. Yeah. And the person in the shack is not respected because, you haven't got the stuff. Yeah. So what's our religion? Money and power. Yeah. And it's like, how do we create a world where power isn't what we strive for, and where money isn't our measure of success? Like, you go, I mean, I do. It's like, at this age, I go, what is going to make me a successful person? Yes, money certainly will make my life comfortable, and you want to have security. I get that. But it's like, how if I end up lying on my deathbed and go, did I live a good life, or was I a successful person, and what do I measure that success by? Is it going to be like, well, I had the BMW and the big car, and I traveled, I could travel, and I could dine in the best restaurants, and I drank the best wine, and I spent $5,000 on a bottle of champagne every week? Is that my measure of success? And until we can break that and make that innate in us, that we don't perceive that as success. And I think how do you do that?
Well,
unless you blow up the planet,
these conversations help. I think
it's not going to happen, because that's our value system. So until we change our value system and what we strive for, I go, it's never going to change. History is going to repeat itself. It's just going to be same old, same old.
There are people striving for, I don't know if it's quite the right word. They want, like it used to be when we were young, there was people that made a big pile of money, and then they became very benevolent. They gave us things, they gave back into the communities and into society, and because they had enough. They didn't need any more, so they gave it back into the community. My town, we had Lady Dunn, Lord Beaverbrook, all that sort of crowd. They built our town. We didn't have to have any kind of any fundraisings or anything like that. They gave us a fire hall. They gave us an arena. They gave back a lot, and it was partly because they wanted legacy. They want to, they want to have an art gallery named after them, or they want to have, and I don't mind if that's your motivation, but I want to see that, and I think it is coming back, some of that kind of legacy, desiring legacy. And if once we get past, okay, you got enough to survive, what do you want to what do you want it to look like? What do you want to leave? And I fear that some people have pretty dark agendas as to what they think they should leave behind. But we'll see. I think I still continue to have hope, and I think there's some good things going on, and some bad things for sure. But I think it'll be what it's going to be. We'll just have to kind of see, I guess. I don't know.
Roll with the punches.
We'll have to roll with the punches.
Yeah.
How you doing? Are you?
I think we need to. It's been a long, good conversation. I have no idea what the time is or how long.